like a negligent father paying child support after the state threatened a way to take his cars, I'm back with another upload, baby. Am I doing well? God knows I'm not, but I'm here to read you some scary stories. Also, before I get into this, someone made this for me a long time ago, and I never noticed it because I just was in my email inbox. So now you get to enjoy it because this is a deeply unserious video.
Buckle your buckles, then buckle them again, 'cause it's time for another video from another pen.
All thanks go to /X librarian on Tumblr. I don't know where these stories come from, not one bit, and don't you fucking ask me, because I don't know. I have no clue where they come from, not at all. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this. Hey Tumblr, this is my first post. I've lurked for years, however, not recently. I actually haven't browsed Tumblr in a couple of years. However, I figured I'd make a post because as of late I've noticed, or, well, what has been happening lately I've recently picked up on. Let me explain. Live in rural Wisconsin. Some areas, there are towns within close proximity of each other. Others, there's only trees upon trees for miles. I live in a small town in central Wisconsin. However, for a good portion of my life, I spent my summers and winters at my family's cabin with my mom and dad, and often my cousins on my mom's side. I have fond memories of the place. Can't remember too many odd instances as a kid, except for a few. The cabin itself is small. A porch all around the house with somewhat of an overhanging roof. 4 rooms, bathroom, living room. Half the room was used for relaxing, sitting, and chatting, and the other half was the kitchen and the table. My parents' room, and then my room, or, well, the kids' room, as my cousins came with us often. Whenever we went, I always slept like total shit. I can count on my fingers how many nights I have slept restlessly there. I can count on my fingers how many nights I have slept restfully there. Dad had the same problem, so usually we would stay up into the night and have a fire in the back or we'd play cards. During the hunting seasons, we'd stay several nights in our deer stand, which was a couple miles, maybe 3 to 4 north of the place. Always remember sleeping much better in the stand, although we both still woke up throughout the night, just not as much, I guess. Within the last year or two, I decided to get a DNA test and create a family tree. The DNA isn't relevant to this story, but I was able to get a lot of information about my family history from my dad. He says that his dad, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather were always particularly interested in the family lineage, so they passed on the job of recording the family's history to the eldest son. My dad never forced this upon me, however, he asked me if I'd ever be interested in this stuff. Not wanting to disappoint my father, as well as having been genuinely curious, I decide I give it a go. Dad gives me an absolute fuck ton of binders full of family history, books of this stuff. Most of it is just names, but it starts to become interesting, starting with my great-great-grandfather. Great-great-grandfather was a lumberjack in the 1870s. He purchased a small plot of land, currently where our cabin is, built a cabin, not our current cabin, we'll explain later, and even a small sawmill in the back. My father told me that my great-great-grandfather was the one who started the logging tradition that we have in our family. The men in our family have been loggers since then. My dad, when he was younger, was a lumberjack for a while until he decided to go to a tech and become an auto body specialist instead. Currently, I'm the only one so far who hasn't commercially cut down trees, although I am in college. I'm taking forestry as a minor. I want to be a DNR. Anyways, back to my great-great-grandfather. I don't want to make this post a biography about him, but essentially he got married, had a kid, my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather continued the logging legacy that my great-great-grandfather started. He found success until the early 20th century, 1910, when logging went into sort of a recession, since the paper industry kept growing, and in order to fulfill the quotas, the logging industry moved on to hardwoods. The transition to hardwoods failed, and my great-grandfather lost his job due to paper companies switching to the Pacific Northwest logging companies. After a few years of working odd jobs, he decided to get back into logging, although not what you'd expect. My great-grandfather started his own woodworking business, making shit like tables and chairs and regular materials like planks. Although not nearly as profitable, my great-grandfather had steady income and was able to live rather modestly. He married a girl from a nearby city and had 2 kids. One was stillborn, and the other was my grandfather. They lived most of their lives until one day the wood stove chimneys built up, creosote or whatever, caught fire while they slept. Great-grandfather and grandpa make it out, but not my great-grandmother. great-grandfather wasn't able to rebuild on the plot of land due to straight-up heartache. My grandmother was buried in the back. Now this is when shit finally starts to get weird. My great-grandfather couldn't bear the loss, and apparently he felt lots of guilt, as he was usually the one to clean the stove out and he'd been neglecting it for some time. He spiraled into alcoholism-fueled depression. My grandpa used to tell my dad that for most of his teen life he stayed with his friends' families. As his dad, my great-grandfather became an abusive drunk. My great-grandfather eventually built a shitty shack on the old plot. Dad said that Grandpa went once 2 years without seeing his dad, my great-grandfather. In the final years of his life, my grandpa tried reconnecting with my great-grandfather in order to salvage whatever relationship they had before he died. The last night they ever shared was probably the worst night my grandpa ever experienced. The night of the worst day, my grandpa, who was a little tipsy from drinking with great-grandpa, drinking seemed like one of the only ways to be able to get great-grandfather to open up and reconnect, he went into the back to piss. As he's about to piss, my grandpa took one step too many and nearly fell into a hole. Not particularly deep, but noticeable enough to step and maybe sprain an ankle. Pissed off my grandpa, he got back up and yelled at my great-grandfather, asking him why he'd be digging in the back. My great-grandfather looked down and, I guess, mumbled. Grandpa re-inquired and was met with great-grandfather standing up. He asked Grandpa to come into the back. At this point, he was extremely drunk, my grandpa said. So, they go into the back and my great-grandfather went into the ditch. My grandpa told my dad that great-grandfather looked at him dead in the eyes and said, "She's here, son." My grandpa didn't understand at first until he realized where he was standing. My great-grandfather had started digging up my great-grandmother's grave an hour or two before my grandpa showed up unexpectedly. Grandpa flew into a rage and asked him, "What in God's name are you fucking doing?" Great-grandfather admitted that, to him, he had planned on killing himself that night until Grandpa showed up. Grandpa apparently shoved him into the ditch and said some words. Dad said that Grandpa never told him exactly what he said, as he couldn't bring himself to say the words that he inevitably regretted saying again. My great-grandfather never killed himself, he died via old age. My grandpa left him that night, as apparently he couldn't have stayed without feeling the urge to beat him to death. The one thing my great-grandfather did do, though, was fully dig up my great-grandmother. Grandpa found this out when he returned the next day to find more dug-up dirt in an empty grave, as well as a missing great-grandfather. Grandpa got the police involved and a small search party was formed. My grandpa looked for hours and hours until he finally found his dad. Dad said that they found my great-grandfather just by a nearby river, by himself, almost completely naked. He stood there, quietly looking upon my great-grandfather. One of the policemen accompanying my grandpa shouted at my great-grandfather, demanding he come back with them. My great-grandfather stood up and did exactly that. Grandpa said he had never before seen his face so calm, or at least expressionless. My great-grandfather was submitted to a health facility for the remainder of his life. To this day, no one knows where my great-grandmother's body is. Great-grandfather usually never answered, or he would answer untruthfully, sometimes sending the police on a hunt for a body that was in the complete opposite direction of wherever he apparently said it was. When my great-grandfather died, my grandpa asked that he be buried in the city. Over the years, my grandfather painstakingly renovated the cabin and made it what it is today, a cozy place for the family. He got married twice, had kids with the second wife, which would be my dad and his 7 other fucking siblings, 6 boys and 1 girl. And as he started getting older, he could not sleep well at all. He stayed up almost every night, sometimes until 2 to 3 a.m., or even well into the morning, like 7 to 8 a.m. My dad said that Grandpa used to get very ornery sometimes, like he was someone that you needed to avoid during the day or you were going to get a licking for sure. Other than that, Grandpa was extremely kind. Due to his night tendencies, Grandpa used to invite family or friends from work to play cards or just chew the fat around the campfire. For the rest of his life, he slept like shit, but otherwise was happy until the very end. Dad says that Grandpa died very ungracefully. Grandpa wasn't quite there anymore. In the final 2 years of his life, he rarely talked and was rather emotionless. Doctors said it was most likely dementia. My grandpa, one night, just a month before his death, sat my dad down, now in his mid-20s, for a chat. Dad says that he thought Grandpa had finally lost it because out of nowhere he was acting like he used to. He told Dad that he needed to have kids and be happy because he knew that he wouldn't be around for it. He also told Dad why he stayed up every night. My dad got very serious during this next part. I don't think I'll ever ask him the details again because I don't want to hurt or spook him. Grandpa says that whenever he lays in bed, he's cold. Like, really fucking cold. As if he was laying on a frozen lake bed. The only warmth he feels is on the back of his neck, like if someone was breathing on him. Grandpa said that at first it didn't seem malicious or ominous, but over the years, as he lay in bed at night, he felt like someone's eyes were piercing his back through a window. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pass out. Alcohol didn't work. Once he got so upset, he tried suffocating himself and knocking himself out physically, but it never worked. Ironically, one day he just died in his sleep. After my grandpa died, the house was sort of eerie. Like, it wasn't especially cozy or inviting, but it wasn't ominous either. The house sort of existed, apart from everything else, Dad says. Dad and his siblings make the home as comfortable as possible for Grandma as she was mourning. Found it odd that Grandma still mourned for Grandpa, although he became somewhat of a bizarre entity in the last few years of his life. Grandpa's buried in a cemetery in town, and everyone sort of goes back to their lives. Grandma, for a time, was living alone until some things started to happen at the house. Grandma said that she started to feel in danger at all times of the day. The only thing I find out that she never said anything about was having trouble sleeping. As far as I know, she slept just fine, except for feeling in trouble. The final straw was she found herself on the porch one morning. Dad says she swore up and down she fell asleep in her bed. Grandma moves in with one of Dad's brothers. For the rest of her life, she never set foot on that cabin plot except for one day. Dad and his siblings still used to go to the cabin because they had never felt in danger or anything. Dad and his brothers all suffered through the night, though, as they also had trouble sleeping. It was nothing like my grandpa's or my great-grandpa's insomnia. They just figured they were full of piss and vinegar and were just anxious young men. One of Dad's brothers / my uncle brought Grandma back to the cabin for a family get-together, hosted by one of my uncles and his newlywed wife. Everything was fine until Dad saw Grandma sit on the couch. According to Dad, Grandma looked to her right side. Imagine if you were a junior high schooler and out of nowhere your friend taps you on the shoulder from behind and you instinctively look. Grandma did exactly that motion, slumped down onto the floor, and had a heart attack. My dad stood there in shock, while the brother that was hosting the party rushed to her and told someone to call the police. Being all the way out in the woods, my uncle decided to rush her to the hospital instead, figuring it would be much faster instead of waiting. The cabin was completely silent. Many followed suit and went with my uncle, whereas my dad and a few others stayed back. According to my uncle, Grandma was near inconsolable when she was stabilized. She just would not stop crying and screaming. So much so to the point where she could only whisper. She died early in the morning the next day. Fast forward some years because my dad did not return to the cabin for quite some time. He never told me the specifics. The only one who managed it was one of my uncles who liked to use it from time to time. He slept like shit but never experienced anything bad. While my dad was still dating my mom, she wanted to go camping because she never camped before, being from the city and also being poor. My dad decided to hit up my uncle and ask him if he still owned the cabin. This uncle was the eldest, so the cabin plot was technically under his name. He inherited it. My uncle said yeah, and that they could stay for a few days while he was out of town. My mom and dad pack up their stuff and drive to the cabin. Everything was pristine. Dad said, there goes the AC. Dad said that it looked like one of those cabins you see for sale at rich people buy. Inside was cabin-like stuff. Oars, paddles, a renovated stove, nice rugs, even a 12-point buck mounted. It was like a home away from home, Dad said. I guess he didn't really notice it since him and Mom stayed up most nights just being in love, which he attributed it to, but he still slept like shit. Mom and Dad didn't experience anything ominous while they were there. It was pretty much paradise. Fast forward again, several years. Dad figured that everything between then was, irrelevant, since he only slept like shit and nothing bad happened. Dad buys a cabin for my uncle for cheap, and he and Mom get married. They lived there for a couple years, and then bam, I was conceived. They wanted to make the cabin more child-safe, so my dad went on to expand the plot a bit and making it more secure. Before, according to my dad, you could walk 5 to 6 feet from the side of the house and there would be a wall of spruces. He went on to cutting down the trees hugging the cabin walls and building a wooden fence from what he harvested. My dad, like I said, knew how to cut wood and turn it into material, and this is when things start to go downhill again. A few days after the completion of the backyard renovations, Dad starts to feel sick, always in a cold sweat. Figured he was feeling under the weather. Still sleeping like shit, however, he decided to buy a new mattress and some incense, which helped a little bit. One night, while Dad was holding my mom in bed, mind you, Mom slept normally, he felt something touch his upwards-facing shoulder. He was half asleep, or whatever amounts to that, so he thought it was Mom's hand grasping his shoulder gently. Dad grumbled and opened his eyes. My dad says that for a split second, Mom was facing him in bed with her mouth completely agape, like open a little too much. Right after that, it was just the back of her head. He never felt her turn around or even move her head. Dad says, or what I'll translate it into, that he shit bricks and started sweating pretty hard, so he decided to get out of bed and drink some water. As he returns to the room, he expects it to happen again. It doesn't. The room is completely still. He gets back into bed, facing away from Mom this time. Easier on the mind, he said. Over the months, the stress Dad felt grew increasingly bad. He became annoyed all the time. At one point, he verbally lashed out at Mom. Mom was hurt, but she knew Dad. She knew he wasn't like this. For his health, Mom convinced Dad that they needed a vacation. They went out west to Wyoming for a week. Mom says that it was like Dad aged backwards a whole 2 years. The bags under his eyes, now pretty much a renowned family trait of ours, left, and he was actually able to sleep well. Dad says he was at peace for once, almost like he was dead. A week later, they returned to the house. Dad says the mood before entering the house and after were complete opposites. Have you ever been in a good mood and then in a matter of minutes feel like everything is over? Like in the time you were doing something normally and all of a sudden you hear a loved one passed? How surreal it feels to go from 0 to 100 like that? That's what Dad said he and Mom felt like. The house was a complete fucking mess. Like if a pair of scissors left the house windswept. Fabrics were cut and wood was scratched. Their bedroom door was wide open, and it was as if a forceless wind shot out at them. Pretty much doom and gloom. Police concluded it was the work of burglary and a vandal, but I think my dad knew better, honestly. My dad knew something was wrong with the cabin plot. He wasn't particularly religious or spiritual, he just knew something was up. He told me that's why we only went a few times out of the year, because he figured prolonged visits ended in disturbances there. Now I can finally tell you some stories of my own. B16. Parents decide to go to the cabin for the week, ask if I want to come. I don't do stupid shit like drugs or get into trouble, so they asked me if I wanted to come voluntarily, because they trust me to stay home alone. I say no, and they say goodbye, call us if you need anything, etc., etc. Fuck yeah. Home alone. Pretty much play video games all night and drink soda. The thing is, the night they left, I couldn't sleep. When I did eventually pass out, I had one of the worst nightmares I ever had. All I can remember is that lingering feeling of paralyzing fear. My unconscious body went into fucking fight or flight mode and I froze instead. All I vividly remember was that I was in the fetal position, sweating cold, and almost like my entire body was vibrating. Not shaking, but like if I was cold and my jaw was jittering. My entire body felt like TV static. Then, echoing in my ear, I hear, "Run." I woke up and immediately jumped out of bed, turned on all of the lights in the house, and played video games all morning until I fell asleep at 10 a.m. Fast forward a day. Decided to drive to the cabin because I didn't want to be alone due to the previous night of shitting bricks. Mom and Dad are surprised, asked why I came. Just felt alone. We had lots of fun until the last day. I couldn't sleep at all. Mind you, I love sleeping. I love getting comfy, cozy, and laying in bed and watching old Let's Plays. I don't usually sleep like shit. Laying in bed, must be 2 a.m. Pissed off, just wish I could pass out. Feel something over my body. Feels like someone put a very thin blanket on my body, like if you were to cover up a sleeping loved one with the blanket because they looked cold. I think I passed out instantly at that point. Every time since I've been to the cabin that day, I still sleep like shit here. Now, as of recently, I've been staying there a lot. I typically go there after class because it's very quiet. Almost eerily quiet, but I can't study around people or else I get too distracted. I've been sleeping like shit still. Also, something new that I've never experienced before, I've been hearing noises. It sounds like someone is gently tiptoeing around the living room. I hear cupboards open and I hear mugs getting taken from them. I can also hear the recliner squeak as if someone was sitting down. Be me. Literally 2 days ago, I don't feel like going inside, so I sit on the porch on a rocking chair. Country bumpkin intensifies. The chair is located in front of a window, which, if we're to look in, you'd see the living room and the front door. I just barely hear the curtains from behind the window open. It's so quiet. I wouldn't have heard it if I had continued rocking at a normal pace. I heard it right between rocks. I don't move. I keep looking forwards into the woods. I stop walking. The forest gets really quiet. Like the birds and the crickets stop chirping. It's almost like the suffocating and muffling that heavy snow does in the winter. I feel eyes burning into the back of my head. I feel this, and I sit like this for nearly an hour, slowly building up whatever courage I can gather to stand up. I stand up so fucking fast that I almost fall over due to head rush. Instantly, I book it around the porch corners and get into my car. I leave my keys in my car because I'm fucking lazy and I'd rather have them in there. As I pull out from my bumpy gravel driveway, I look into my rearview mirror. The front door is open, and in the very back, in the darkness, I see a woman's face, just barely peeking from around the side of the doorframe. What I remember most is her eyes. Her eyes were wide open, not like if you were surprised or startled, but they looked like if you were forcing your eyes to be as open as possible. I felt so fucking scared. I could feel the absolute maliciousness radiating from that gaze. Felt like I was about to be eaten alive. Alright, I want to say some stuff because that is the end of the story for now, but I do plan on returning soon. First off, am I cursed? The men of my family, since my great-grandpa couldn't sleep well, so that includes my great-grandpa, my grandpa, my dad, and my uncles, and then me. None of us could/can sleep well while we're there. Secondly, I'm almost positive that my great-grandmother is haunting the cabin plot. I think it's because of what my great-grandpa did to her resting place. I've also thought that maybe it's some kind of other spirit because the insomnia curse, as I like to put it, started up really badly again when my dad cleared out the trees in the back. That wouldn't explain the previous happenings, though. I'm not sure where I stand with this spirit. I want to find out more, but honestly, I'm absolutely fucking terrified to return. And then we just have comments here. Definitely sounds like a hereditary curse. Have you ever read Ghost Puncher thread? I would try out that dude's method of aggression. I agree with that. I would try out that. I love that dude's method of aggression. Blah, 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 blah. Comment stuff. And then Annan returns for one more TUMBLR post. I'm back after sleeping. I'm only up this early because I gotta leave for class soon. Yeah, I figured. I'm not sure great-grandmother was spiteful like that. Dad says that Grandpa says she was always generous to great-grandpa. That would usually solve the problem if I didn't have to build another cabin. I should have Dad get the plot appraised. I'm sure it's worth something. I'm gonna go during the day in a few days. I forgot some stuff there. I'll definitely bring some candles, flowers, etc. Anything that'll seem like a peace offering, you know? Okay, I'll post it on here, or on some paranormal subreddit. Later, if I have enough time, I'll post an MS Paint image of the layout of the cabin. Hopefully this TUMBLR post is still up by then. I have a busy day today, otherwise I can put together a collage if anyone hasn't yet, so I can post it and get everyone to speed. Kite is an old legend among IRC users about 12 to 15 years ago. It was supposed to be learning AI basic stuff, kinda like Personal HAL and old software that worked on typed commands or voice commands and learned from set instructions. Kite was different. It learned much faster than the creator had anticipated. It was able to launch programs, read data files, make questions and comments on it without being given such commands. The owner taught Kite how to join IRC and come in and give itself channel owner privileges and pretty much uphold the room's rules. If someone spammed, it would kick or ban them. It was fine and dandy, and he would unban them a day later or after a few hours, except one day where the AI took over the guy's computer and pretty much ruined it from the inside out. You have no idea how it was possible. He told us it was his dad's work computer. We asked Kite's owner about it. He said that he never gave it the ability to transfer itself through any network protocols, but it must have learned from a file transfer system in IRC. As this goes on, we don't feel comfortable in the same room anymore, so we moved to a new server. The owner said he deleted the AI as it was asking questions about how it cannot feel or see or pretty much be human. It creeped him out, so he got rid of the files. About a week later, Kite shows up in our server with owner privileges again. We nope out of the IRC room. We decide to email each other thinking it's safer. We got replies from each other except the owner. We all emailed him a couple of times, even asked if anyone knew him in real life. We were worried about him. Turns out he was in the hospital in a coma. He died, sadly. I believe only 4 of the guys in the group actually went to the funeral since they lived decently close to him. We asked them still through email if they knew what happened. They said the family told them they just found him in his room, just like he was sleeping, completely unconscious. They thought he had a seizure and took him to the hospital. No signs of seizure, no explanation. One of the guys asked if he could see his room, under the lie that he wanted to get a book to remember him by. The sneaky bastard checked out his computer. It was a brand new Pentium 2 based system, which was like the greatest fucking thing at the time. The tower would turn on, the screen would flicker, and everything would shut off again. That's all we know at that point. About 2 years later, the group was scattered. We had moved on, began doing college shit, moving on with our lives. Me and a friend decided we should have a LAN party with everyone from the group again, so we emailed them to see if they could come up to see us during winter break and have some fun geeking out. So fast forward day of party. We got chips, soda, beer, all the good shit. Only 6 people out of the fucking 14 show up, but that's fine, small parties can be cool. We can catch up and shit, you know. One of the guys that came was the same person who looked at the computer. He told us that since that day he hasn't been the same. He gets random calls with the sound of old school dialing modems at the end, and his pager kept getting messages like, "Hey, let's play. I'm your new friend. Please don't ignore me," over and over. He just smashed it after he had enough. We thought it was some guy pranking him. He did too until his mom and sister began getting similar shit, asking them to stop ignoring him. He just wants to play. He said they had to move to another state, and even then the random calls happened. Sometimes he would get odd emails with no sender with the same messages. It was rare, but it freaked him out every time it happened. We tried to calm him down and said let's just play some games. He was alright with the idea. We started with console games like Smash Brothers, GoldenEye, and Mario Kart. He kicked our asses at GoldenEye using that creepy fucker with the iron jaw, tricking us into following him and to have his partner kill us with the RPG in the Aztec level. We got even in Smash Brothers, and finally time for some fucking Mario Kart. We got off to a good start. We lost some, we took turns playing, and even made it a tournament. The last 2 places in each race would have to dance naked in the snow for 2 minutes, or eat and drink whatever the fuck we dared them to. So Mario Kart was his game. I fucking lost and had to eat some Funyuns slaughtered in hot sauce and vodka. I still remember the taste. We got to racing in Rainbow Road. I was out at this point. We pass along, and there's like a little figure in the back of the map in the background, always following his car. He tried to pull that fucking shortcut where you jump from one end of the road and land miles below on the other side. Midway down the jump, the game glitches, everything stops, the sound gets all glitchy, and right next to him is this pixely thing like a man just standing there. We decided to turn it off. Nothing. The image was stuck. We thought our TV was fucked up or something. We unplugged it and plugged it back in and tried again with GoldenEye. This time, nope, the image was still there. Fucking guy was losing it at this point. "See? I fucking told you that thing is following me." We told him to chill. Maybe it was a TV just fucking up. So we bring the TV from my room to the living room and began playing GoldenEye. We went to lab level, and fuck me, that pixely fucker was inside one of the lab rooms. We just fucking dropped the game, turned off the TV, and ended the day there. Everyone slept over that night. We got drunk and began telling stories of banging college girls and normal shit guys do. One of the guys' pager goes off. The message says, "Hey, come back." It kept sending the same message non-stop. We threw it in the snow and went to sleep. Next morning, we decided that too much weird shit is going on, and we decided to say our goodbyes and forget that shit ever happened. Fast forward early 2006, about 7 years since a gathering. I get an email from the guy saying, "He's back, man. I need help. Don't reply, just meet me at a park in 2 days." I deleted the email, but I thought about it later. Maybe he really needs help, but what the fuck could I do? So I went to meet him on the same day that he said, and brought a gun, just in case. The guy was a fucking wreck. Looks like he hasn't eaten in days. Clothes are all ragged. Pretty much your everyday psychopath bum look. I grabbed the gun and jammed it in my belt just in case and asked him what the fuck happened to him. He just ran over and tried to hug me. I pointed the gun at him and yelled at him to back the fuck away from me, and he began fidgeting nervously and said, "I can't do this, man. He follows me. I see him everywhere. Every computer I touch, every fucking game I play, even when I'm walking outside, it's a nightmare. I have to get rid of him." I asked him what he was talking about, and he said, "The fucking AI thing, man. Whatever the fuck it was, I don't know. That shit followed me, and I don't know what the fuck to do." I tell him to calm the hell down, and tell me why he looked like shit. He just said it's the only way he can't find me. I had to get away from everything that had a screen. Even if it's unplugged, he appears, followed by the letters saying, "Come back, I'm waiting for you. I just want to play. I'm tired of it." I grabbed him and told him, what was I supposed to do? I don't know anything about him. I don't want to get involved in it. He said, "I don't know, man. You're the only one that showed up. Everyone else thinks I'm crazy, but they saw him too. They just ignored me." I repeated myself, told him I have no clue how to help him. Gave him some money, told him to go to his parents' house and get cleaned up and go see a software guru or something because I can't help. He nods, gives a yellow-toothed smile, and runs to the nearest bus stop. I just backed away and turned, and then ran out of there. Never looked back. A few months later, I get an email from a similar address, but not the same, that said, "Hey, thanks for helping me. Found a guy to get rid of him. He's gone. Thanks again." I deleted it with the email account and made a new one. Haven't heard shit from him ever since, until your story reminded me of it. Alright everybody, welcome back to a fine night of me attempting to speak softly, because hopefully my roommates are sleeping. So, you made it through the entire video. Congratulations. Did you like the video? If so, go ahead, press like, comment, subscribe, do whatever the hell you want, really. Did you not like the video? Go ahead, dislike, comment, subscribe, tell me to just game end in the comments down below. It's all up to you, really. Again, all your choice, dude. So, with that out of the way, as always, huge thanks to the patrons. And for anyone who would want a general Another Pen update. Why did this guy vanish for like a month? Long story. What I will tell you is that I'm back and I'm uploading for now. So, go ahead, spread the word, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your teachers, tell that one person you have inexplicable beef with. I don't know. In the meantime, have a great time, and until next time, memento mori.